Good morning. You can always tell when there's a new barista at the coffee shop, or a new teller at the bank, or a new checker at the grocery store. There's a gentle awkwardness to their movements, a sheepishness sometimes, or there's a supervisor over their shoulder kind of making sure that things are all right. And when I see people in those roles for the first time or early on, I usually comment because they're trying to hide the fact that they're new, right? And I say, you're doing a good job. Are you new at this? Look how friendly you are, or your smile means the world, or you'll get the hang of it. As we get older, we are so different from our younger selves. As children, we were excited to learn new things. Look at me, Mom. Look at me, Dad. Hey, Coach, check this out. I've developed a new pass, or I've mastered the bike, going faster than I ever thought, going over jumps and such. But the older we get, sometimes we are sheepish about the new things we learn. We feel a little vulnerable and awkward and maybe even embarrassed. Well, in our relationship with God, I've been talking a lot during these walks about new ways of connecting and new ways of encountering the divine. And that might leave you feeling like that's okay for someone else, but I'm just fine the way things are right now. And yet, are you feeling a tug? Are you feeling like perhaps some of the things I'm saying are hitting home? That tug is God. Are you feeling like perhaps your relationship with God is kind of lifeless at the moment? Perhaps a little boring, as we said the other day? That also is God. Chances are God's feeling a little bored too. We're embarrassed about, at this point in our lives, we should know how to pray. Or the way we've prayed have served us well. Why should we change? And yet, in any relationship that is vibrant and alive, change is part of it, and you've lived long enough to know that. And so we have the opportunity now to encounter God in a new way. What will that look like? How will you allow God to connect with you in ways that hasn't existed before? We talked a little bit the other day about lists. If we go to prayer and our intention is to remind God of the needs of other people, I have a list, you have a list, and we're kind of missing the point. Years ago, one of my students gave me one of those hardback empty books that I ended up filling with hundreds of names of people who've asked me to pray for them. If you've asked me to pray for them, for you, you're in that book too. The thing is, when I pray, remembering all of those people that have asked me for prayers, I don't sit and articulate their name one after another during this prayer time. Imagine if I were having coffee with you and I spent the whole time at coffee reciting the names of people that I'm thinking about. I'd be using my precious time with you, just reciting a list of names. God doesn't need to be reminded about the needs of others. So now when I pray, I say for everyone that's in the book, and I try to shift my gaze to what's happening between us, to what God is inviting forth from me that couldn't happen if I were just focused on my list, on my agenda, on the things that I think I need to do and tell Him about. There's a little vulnerability that goes into something like this if we change up the way we connect with God. We need to be open to feeling a little bit awkward, a little bit uncertain. And perhaps that's what keeps us in the mode of practicing what we do, is we don't want to feel uncomfortable in our prayer. And yet, our relationship with God, we know, is not about being comfortable. We know that our relationship with God is about growth. So Maybe we need to talk about this a little bit more in our upcoming little walks. How do we shift gears? How do we feel okay with that? In the meantime, set your list aside and trust that the time that you spend with God is better spent looking into God's eyes and placing your hand on God's heart to see what's going on there.